Well, hello, and welcome back to, this is an unscheduled thing. I didn't plan on doing this. I just got a thought in my head, and now I have to share my thought with the world, even if I just scream it into the void and nobody listens, which is fine. Most people don't listen to me. You probably shouldn't listen to me. I mean, at the very least, you should, put this on while you're doing, 10 other things, trying to, do whatever it is you're trying to wrangle in your life. And you want to just hear a guy just shout at the clouds. But this is about the book Yesteryear. I look at Google News. The book kept coming up, and it's, I feel like just the synopsis of the book is supposed to be bait, right? Not for me, obviously. But bait for women, right? There's women out there that, okay, so first off, there's the whole trad wives, that play. All right, let's back that up a little bit more. There's the women that play trad wives on social media, right? That's, and it's cosplay, okay? I hope we all know it's cosplay, right? Just like when Jessica Negri says at the camera that she loves me, I know she doesn't really mean she loves me. She just loves the attention I give her in the form of watching advertisements, okay? We all understand that it's all, performative, right? Because they're just performing, they're cosplaying, they're not really pioneer settlers because it's a business, right? It's a business of selling you a lie, okay? So I hopefully, I could be selling you a lie right now that Yesteryear is Fight Club for women, but I have receipts, okay? So, full disclaimer, there's going to be spoilers. I hope that you aren't clicking on this video thinking, oh, he's probably going to talk about it. I mean, I kind of feel like just saying that Yesteryear is Fight Club for women. If you understand Fight Club at all, it's a huge spoiler, right? The thing is, I feel like there's just going to be no overlap between these two demographics, right? I don't think women are going to watch a movie that they think is about a bunch of guys beating each other up in the basement. And I don't think men are going to watch a movie about an influencer trad wife. I just don't think, the two spheres are ever going to intersect. And honestly, the only reason I did, because I was like, okay, it's a book. Clearly, she did not, I read the synopsis, which is she goes back in time to 1855 or 65 or 85. It really doesn't matter. She goes back to sometime in there, and I mean the time is irrelevant. And the only thing I was interested, okay, because I was like, okay, what really happened? And so I found a synopsis and I read it, and it was a chapter by chapter synopsis, so it kind of gave me a good structure of the story. And you're probably like, how can you discuss a book without having read the book the long way? And the reality is this: a lot of people put out summaries for a lot of things. They get most of it right. There's I won't be able to quote anything from the book, right? I will be able to quote Fight Club because it had a movie, so I can quote the movie, right? And so I won't be able to give you any direct quotes. I just have a basic highlight of the story. I'm gonna be honest, Yesteryear is really not a book for me, right? I'm a man. I personally don't have any stake in the trad wife cosplay thing. It's, it's a thing that exists that, I mean, again, it's it's a thing that exists, right? It's not something I really care if it exists or doesn't exist. Now, there's certain things I dispute, I don't really feel like trad wife came from incel speak. I heard that. I'm I don't really I mean, maybe, but to me it was I remember growing up. I remember my grandmother, one of them, not both of them, she was a quote-unquote traditional wife. Now, maybe traditional wife, I mean, back then it was just stay-at-home mom, right? I mean, but we know what, it's the same implication, right? One of my grandmothers, she was a stay-at-home mom, right? And my parents would tell me about her all the time and how she stayed at home and this and that. And it was interesting because one of my families was, one of my grandparents, set of grandparents was, and my other set of grandparents wasn't. They both worked. So I had kind of the contrast to both, right? So it was kind of interesting, like I grew up with both scenarios, okay? So like I feel it's weird to say that, like, that's a thing. And of course, let me be clear, okay? My grandmother, that was a stay-at-home mom, was not making Cheerios from scratch or any of this other performative crap, okay? That's all performative crap. But she was responsible for running the household, cooking the dinner, you know, planning the meals, grocery shopping, all those kind of things. So she did handle that, but she went to a grocery store like a normal person, okay? She was not raising the wheat in the backyard and pretending like it got threshed, okay? Which again, unless you're Ted, and I don't even know if Ted Kaczynski, like, took it that far. But unless you like Ted Kaczynski, because Ted Kaczynski, like, he is one of the few people that I really feel like in modern times, like, literally lived off the land, right? He didn't have running water in his place. Obviously, Ted Kaczynski did a lot of terrible things. I'm not trying to be like, oh, whitewashing Ted Kaczynski. He had a good, I wouldn't say good, but he had a philosophy. And it was a well-developed philosophy. But what he did with that philosophy, instead of trying to preach his philosophy, was terrible, right? You don't hurt people. You know? If you can't win people over with your words, you don't then try to win them over with violence, right? That's just not what you're supposed to do. But Ted Kaczynski is like one of the few people that I can say that, like, he didn't have running water. He literally lived off the land in his cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and he was, you know, obviously not cosplaying that part, right? Maybe you went to the grocery store, I don't know. Honestly, I have some sympathy for Ted Kaczynski in the fact that I feel like he was somebody that was so smart that we as a society failed him, in the sense that we were not able to get him the resources where he had another outlet for what, you know, he did. Which is no excuse. Like, I'm not trying to excuse his behavior. Please don't say that. But, like, what I'm trying to say, and this is really kind of deviating off the path, is that, and it's the same thing I feel with, like, Christopher Langan, and at least he didn't do any crazy stuff. He's gotten kind of crazier. But it's kind of always hard to see these, like, really intelligent people that, you know all he knew a branch of mathematics that maybe 30 people in the world understood. I don't even understand it. And, like, it's sad to see that genius be used for evil instead of, like, being harnessed for good, right? Is what it is. But again, the only reason I bring him up, because he is literally, like, the guy I think of when you're talking about a guy in a cabin in the woods, you're Ted Kaczynski. He literally did it. Had no running water. Whatever, right? So let's be clear, like, all the trad wave stuff, it's all just women cosplaying like they're pioneers. You know, like, my stay-at-home grandmother, she did not, like, you know, roll the oats from, you know, make the bread from scratch and all that. No, there's this thing, even back then, they had, it's called a grocery store. You go to the grocery store and buy your food. Like normal people, you know? So, like, and that's why I can never get any Yesteryear, because, like, I would know, like, I don't have enough to suspension of disbelief, because I'm like, oh, of course, she's gonna be this ridiculously person, like it's like gonna be like reading a book about somebody I hate, right? Because it's all performative, it's all crap, right? Anyways, but now I want to get into the meat and potatoes that I've wasted about. You probably clicked off the video after about 8 minutes because I went on the rant about this stuff, but whatever. The really weird thing is there's so many similarities between these two books, right? So, of course, we have Fight Club, which has the unreliable narrator. Can you imagine that the woman that thinks she time traveled back to the 1800s is also an unreliable narrator? Wow, who would have guessed that one, right? So we already have that going into both of these. The synopsis is she has, like, a mental issue that is really not well explained. Like, I could not, like at least Fight Club, I can understand Fight Club. Like, I don't, so I will say this, he had, what was it? Multiple personality disorder. And like she had like some type of almost it was the closest thing I could come up with would be some type of amnesia, sort of similar to what happened in probably the closest movie they did that was Memento. Is she had some type of amnesia about part of her life. Is probably the best, and I don't know that the author really sold it as amnesia, but the closest thing I can have, and I'm going to kind of spoil, this is like really spoiling the book, like if you want to know what the twist is. Well, the amnesia part kind of already spoiled it, but whatever, I warned you there were going to be spoilers. I just don't really like ruining things for people, even though like this is clearly like a spoiler video, but I just feel like, you know, I don't want to ruin things for people. I know how much that can suck. But she has like a weird amnesia, and again, like the closest thing I can come up with to is Memento, because she basically forgets that she's still like she like does like the time travel thing doesn't happen. It's like she does like she hits her head or so, like I don't even know that she hits her head. I don't think the author wrote that in, so that's. But she has some kind of amnesia. Where when she's still performing, but she has forgotten how she got there. Like, it's like, I think 20 years later or something like that. And that's like the big reveal at the end. It's that it's not 1855, it's really 2046. And she has lost all this time somehow. And it's not, I would say it's not really, I would say saying it isn't really explained well is probably the understatement of the year. Because when I was looking at this book and reading like some of the critique about it, that was one of the things people didn't like. To be fair, I didn't really like that about, like, I understood the point of what Fight Club was trying to do with the multiple personality disorder. When you find out that the Tyler and the narrator are the same person, you know, they go into the whole thing about how Tyler is basically the guy everybody wants to be, or at least the guy the narrator wants, specifically in this case, the guy the narrator wants to be. And it's a thing about how we all have we all have the two wolves inside of us, right? There's the wolf we are and the wolf we want to be, right? It's the two wolves thing. And, you know, obviously the whole thing is that, you know, the narrator is just so deranged that he just believes that the other guy exists. Now, in both cases, I would have to say that that takes away from the story. Okay? I think Fight Club would have been a better book if Tyler really did exist, and it was somebody that, like, you know, the narrator just, like, kind of latched on to in the weird way that it is presented until you get to the twist. I think that would have been better. And the reason I say that is because, you know, Fight Club has a very anti-consumerist, anti-corporate messaging. And the ending sort of, like, diluted that meaning to a lot of people I knew. It didn't dilute it to me because I really didn't care. Like, I understood what it was going for. Again, I think the movie would be better if it didn't have that twist. I don't think the twist adds to the movie, but it's like the twist sort of, like, sanitizes it. And there's a couple things that Fight Club does that I think goes a little too far. With the number one thing being is, as much as I love quoting it, the used motor oil is fertilizer for your yard is the one thing I would say, like, I know they did it for shock value. I totally get that. You don't have to explain that to me. But it's the one thing I feel like went too far, right? Because we, you know, even jokingly should not talk about degrading our environment like that. Trust me, there's enough people that want to do it for money. No need to make jokes about stuff like that. Only because, like, to me, it's become so quotable, at least for me, right? So we got these two things, right? Insanity, but see, the difference with Fight Club is what Fight Club does is it deconstructs consumerism and corporate life. And when I say corporate life, I mean, like, the 9-to-5 guy at the office that a lot of us are, right? If you don't work in an office, maybe you work at somewhere, you're like basically check in, check out kind of thing, you know, and we all have that going on in our lives to some degree, right? Some people have it more than others. But we all kind of can relate to that, and that's one of the things where the books are really different, in my opinion. Like, Fight Club doesn't really go into the drudgery of what's going on like that, right? It doesn't need to. And the reason Fight Club doesn't need to do that is because we all understand that drudgery without getting hit over the head with it. Whereas what Yesteryear does is it deconstructs the influencer narrative, where it's this woman, and it goes in a little more about, like, unlike the narrator who just kind of ends up where he's at in this corporate job, the way Yesteryear does it is it actually it does like a chronicle of her journey in getting where she is. Now, one of the things that I would ding Yesteryear a little bit with is, so like the guy she marries, like a senator's do-nothing son. I feel like it would have been better to have made that more like what Ballerina Farms is, where it's a trust fund boy. You know, because the Ballerina Farms guy is one of the inspirations, and her husband is like the heir to the JetBlue fortune, okay? I feel like it would have been better. I mean, Senator is okay, but the reality is, a senator's son would never need to do that. And here's the reason why. Because if you are a senator's son, or the president's son, there are tons and tons of corporations out there that are willing to just give you a job just to have that sway and not really make you do anything, right? And if you don't believe me, you can go look at Congress and see all these senators and all their kids and how they all work for all these companies. And I guarantee you that this senator's son, if, you know, assuming the dynasty and all that, he could be a do-nothing guy and just show up to his corporate job, and nobody's going to care as long as he shows up or logs on or whatever, you know? Like, nobody's going to be really giving him work to do or anything like that. They just would want the pull with the senator to say, oh, you know, we're so-and-so company, and we employ your son, so therefore, when regulation comes up that might hurt the industry that your son works in, it might give you pause. And I guarantee, I'm not saying that they intentionally do it, but I think they unintentionally do. But that's one of the more minor things. I think it would have been better if he was a heir to some vast, I mean, it could made up fortune. Closest nitpick there. Again, we don't get this with Fight Club because there's no need, right? Like, Fight Club runs with the assumption that we all understand the performative corporate work we go through. And a lot of the movie does show the performative work, in case you're unfamiliar. So, like, when I saw Fight Club for the first time, I hadn't worked a real job, but to me, I've been in the school system at that point. I went to public school. And even though public school wasn't work, you could see the same kind of performative stuff if you paid attention in school. The way your teachers do things, obviously we don't have, I think they did a slideshow on some new software they were developing. You're not going to have that in school. But, like, the pretty much the equivalent to something like that is, the Army's going to come in and talk to you and recruit you, right? So, and, like, you can argue that Office Space is a better-ish representation of this than maybe Fight Club. But I would disagree with that, because to me, Office Space is too optimistic, right? The end of Office Space, like, Peter's like, oh, I'm going to go work construction, right? And everything's hunky-dory, and I get the waitress girlfriend who's really hot because she's Jennifer Aniston, and basically everybody rides out into the sunset, right? Normal, happy movie kind of ending. So while it deconstructed cubicle life in a very funny way, I wouldn't say it's going the same way as Yesteryear, because Yesteryear is much more cynical, much more jaded, much more stab you in the heart kind of thing. Not really in the heart, like in the chest maybe. I will go in the heart. With just this cynical, jaded, like, terrible person who is just in it for herself, I think, mostly. Whereas, like, Office Space, like I said, everybody runs out into the sunset. Office Space would have been more realistic if they did like a 20-year later, and then Peter regrets quitting his software engineering job because he has no money, and he hurt his back working construction, right? He like hurt his back like 3 times, lost his union, that's where Office Space would have more accurately kind of ended things. The fact that, he goes off into construction like no big deal, and not showing and I'm not saying the movie has to show this kind of stuff, but I'm just pointing out, like, in the reality, you get into construction, right? Unless you're a really fit guy and in good shape, you're going to hurt yourself. And, you're going to tear your body up, right? So it didn't show that and gave us the happy version, not the realistic version of, oh, okay, you did this, it destroyed your body, the end, right? So now the part of the reason I'm making this video is because I feel like the big draw to Yesteryear is not people looking at it that it deconstructs the influencer narrative. I think most people are like, either they hate it's a lightning rod for people who hate the whole trad wife thing, right? Because I feel like a lot of people are, in part, this is like the biggest driver of me making this video, because I feel like so many people are going to be like, oh, look, it makes fun of the trad wives, but to me that's not really the message of, the author says it's the message, so maybe it is, but I disagree, because to me it's more about taking an influencer and turning them inside out to show how fake everything is. And so, like, the ending is, like, she has this amnesia, and then she's being exploited by her husband's manosphere, whatever. And on top of that, then for some reason, she gets charged with child neglect. I'm not saying she's taking good care of the kids, but, like, for only her to be charged with child neglect and not him, when he's sort of coordinating everything and she's in this weird delirious mental state, right? It was sort of weird. And again, like, I read the synopsis, maybe he gets some punishments, maybe he doesn't, but he's the senator's son, why would he be punished, right? It's all her fault. I thought that was sort of weird, right? Obviously that's a reference to Ruby, whoever, who did that with her kids, right? And obviously there's not really the equivalent in Fight Club you actually don't see in the movie. It's in the book only, and I only know about the difference between the movie and the book because of what somebody told me. Because in the book, right, at the end of Fight Club, it's like they won. You see the destruction of the buildings, you assume they won. In the actual ending, narrator is in an insane asylum. So, like, they both kind of get their comeuppance in a way, right? And we just got arrested there, so you know. But, but the whole reason is I was so fascinated with this whole thing, because as soon as I read, like, the premise, and I thought about it for a bit of Yesteryear, like, the synopsis is probably a better word, is that I'm like, this is hilarious. Because everybody's going to go in here and think it's like, being a trad wife is this terrible, fraudulent thing, which it is, but it's not, like, the trad wife is not fraudulent. The influencer part of it is fraudulent, So that's the whole thing. Like, when I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, I feel like everybody's attracted to that part, because I feel like there's a lot of women out here, a lot of women that just absolutely, for some reason, like, hate the idea of traditional women. Like, to me, it's like the whole thing, and I know this is rich coming from a guy, but I'm gonna say it anyways. The whole purpose of feminism was, like, so women could have a choice, right? You could go be the corporate girl boss if you wanted to. You could go climb the corporate ladder. And I know it's not like, you're not there. We're not there yet. I get it. But, I mean, you could do that, right? But an equally valid choice would be for someone to choose to be a stay-at-home mom or a trad wife, as they call it now. Like, both paths are equal. Now, obviously, I think there's, like, certain reasons that women are more motivated one way than the other. And to me, the big reason that it's kind of, it's not like haha funny, but it's kind of I guess, I didn't see society going this way kind of surprising, is that I feel like a lot not the only pressure, but a lot of the pressure on women is like an economic anxiety, right? We have created a society that encourages both parents to work, and I'm not the only one saying this, by the way. Elizabeth Warren has this book that I absolutely love, that I didn't read, but I read the synopsis of it, called The Two-Income Trap. And it basically states a lot of things that I believe, in the sense that what happens is, and the thing is, I also have this perspective because, again, I have my two conflicting sets of grandparents, right? And so the thing is, with the two-income trap, if you go back to, like, my, like a long time ago, right, when only one member of the household worked, I don't really care if it was, it was usually the man, but whatever, it could be the woman. We're not really here to, that's not really the point of this, right? But the thing is, the first people that had both the husband and wife worked, right, had the greatest income advantage because they were competing against everybody else who only had one salary, right? And even if women weren't getting paid as well back then, that extra 50%, let's say it's terrible and she's making 50% of what he's making, right? That extra 50% is still could amount to a lot of money. And this is also because there's also the Social Security benefits, etc., that were back then. So it was like this weird first mover advantage. And then the problem is, as more and more people see this quote unquote first mover advantage, the advantage goes away, right? Because if everybody is working as a two income household, any advantage in income generated, right, is eroded by, I'll say, capital expenditures to make the two incomes work, right? Because we don't have good public transit in America, you have to have two cars. Because of the way our schools are zoned, well, you have to pay more to get into a school. Like, the biggest thing they talk about was schools, right? Because there's only so many slots at the good school, therefore the prices go. And then if you have 50 people who want to go to this specific school and they're only going to take 30 people, and all 50 people have $1 million, who do we take? It's the same kind of dilemma I have with, like, how do we solve the concert ticket problem, right? Well, in a capitalist society, the way we have decided to determine these things, it will be the 30 people who are willing to pay the most money. And ideally, obviously, you could have backdoor deals and stuff like that. We're just assuming that, like, there's 30 slots, you're 50 people, you're bidding on it, bid, okay? And so we're just assuming that with that kind of system, right, it's going to be the top 30 that are willing to spend the most. And it is sort of an unrealistic example, but I'm trying to give the point of this, right? So it's not like the both partners working thing wins, right? You're in contention with other people doing the same thing, and thus, if everybody, it's one of those things that I've always said in life, if you're following a path that everybody else is going, it's going to be a more difficult path for you to take because everybody's trying to do that thing. For me, when I was growing up, the way I looked at it is every girl I knew wanted to have a family and have kids. Okay? So to me, the easiest way to win was to not have kids, right? Because if I didn't have kids, then that just took that whole financial thing out of the equation, and thus made it easier to, I'll say, succeed at life. Because at that time, my focus of success was on money, right? So I kind of looked at it like, okay, if everybody out there wants to have a house and kids, I can swim the other way and say, you know what? I'm going to just forfeit the kids. You guys have all the kids. I don't really care. I don't need to be a part of the future. You guys can build the future. I'm just going to take care of business, right? And I will have more money than you, and that will be my competitive advantage. So that's kind of what my thought process was when I was there. I kind of forgot where this was going. Well, I guess I was just comparing and contrasting like the traditional one-income life and our more modern and at this point we're at the point now where people are actually engaging in more than one job, right? Like, people are just trying to do like 2 jobs just to stay afloat. So we've even gone beyond like the 2 income. It's more like the 4 income trap, because both parties are now working like 2 jobs, right? Maybe only 3 jobs, you know. But the point is that we've kind of, because of the competitive nature of society, built a society where we are competing for all these resources. And don't get me wrong, there's things we can do to make this less competitive, right? Like, school choice is one of those things, like allowing a lottery-like system rather than a land boundary type system, because then it becomes like any of the things can go in and out. But regardless, that was sort of my point, is that I probably lost the point a little bit there, like, but that was the whole thing. Like, they deconstruct the influencer narrative. I know I'm someone that doesn't really form parasocial relationships. So for me, I know that everything is performative. I know that Jessica Negri doesn't really love me. I know it's all an illusion, right? We're all in a fun house, and every mirror is shaped a little bit different for everybody. That's the algorithm. And so you're all going to see a different-ish reflection of what you want to see. I think I'm blessed with that because it makes me, you know, I'm pretty detached, right? I just, you know, which is good and bad, but I feel like it was really surprising to see how heavy-handed Yesteryear was versus where Fight Club was like, you all know what corporate life is. And again, I will say that corporate life, and like at least my expectation of corporate life, and again, I went in as a software engineer, so, like, I mean, I obviously had programming classes at school, and it, like, to me, I was not surprised at all that my life ended up being exactly like Office Space. However, there were people that I met, because I remember when my friend came over the first time to see me at work, because we were going to go out to lunch. I was like, hey, just come in the office. We had to do something really quick. And he just looked around and he was shocked that I lived in a sea of cubicles. And he was like, oh my God, it's like Office Space in here. And I was like, yeah. I was so shocked that he said that, because I knew that was the trajectory of my life was going to be, right? I just knew that that's what it was going to be. So it was really weird to see someone think that Office Space was like, now again, it is obviously an exaggerated version of office life, but to see someone who thought that working in a corporate office was not like that, when to me, like, the only difference between, in my opinion, between working in a cubicle farm and school was, well, in the cubicle farm, you at least have a bigger desk, right? And that's how they used to work, by the way. I actually looked into this a long time ago. It used to be, you had a bigger desk than you had at school, and everybody just worked at a big desk. You just had a big open empty room, and you had everybody at a specific desk, and they worked like that. It was like, all it was school, but with bigger desks. And you literally had an intake pile and then an outtake pile, because a lot of the labor back then was just like really, really manual data entry kind of thing. So you had intake forms, you would then type them up or whatever, and you make an output form. And that's all that the work was back then. Not all the work, but that was a really good example. That now, obviously, when you get to computers, right, you no longer have to have all that. It becomes email. It becomes, you don't get memos anymore. It becomes an email, etc., etc. So it kind of shifts things around. But that's why I feel like Fight Club didn't go into how the narrator got to where he was in life, because it was such a relatable thing, whereas with the influencer, like, I don't think a lot of people really influence. I'm not really even an influencer. I just make videos where I talk like an idiot online because I want to have my things out here. But I don't think a lot of people really understand the kind of pipeline it is. And I feel like some influencers, like, they kind of, like, you know, and I don't know that this happened in the book, but maybe she didn't. I know it. I don't know that it happened in the book, but I know that there are other influencers that are like, I really didn't expect to do this kind of content, but this kind of content is popular, therefore I do this kind of content, right? Like, I generally don't make stuff like this. I generally don't do this. But I did this because, like, I read this book. I read the synopsis of this book, and I was like, oh my god, this is Fight Club for women. It is just so Fight Club for women. Because it's not violent, but it's still, like, because I feel like women are under a lot more, and I also feel like women are generally under a lot more pressure from these kind of social media algorithms. Guys are too. I'm not minimizing guys, because obviously, right, like, if this was going to be, like, Fight Club 2, right, like, let's pretend it's Fight Club 2, right, I know exactly what it would be, right? Fight Club 2 would be Clavicle and all his crap, right? You would just literally take Clavicle's life and turn it into a book, because he's basically... But the funny thing is, he is like the antithesis of what the narrator was going on, because the narrator was anti-consumerism, anti-corporate life, anti-all this, right? Whereas he is the exact opposite, even though, like, the whole thing is ridiculous, right? The whole thing is so ridiculous because I can prove it to you with the Hot Crazy Matrix, right? I can show you the women's version. Women's version, very easy. I'm gonna delete this afterwards, but here's the women's version, right? This is the hotline. This is the money line. Once you have a sufficient amount of money, it does not matter how hot you are. You are in the husband section over here. Now, this is not saying that women are gold diggers or anything like that. It is just, once you have accumulated a certain amount of wealth, your looks don't matter. Your looks, your muscles, none of that matters. Because you have accumulated enough wealth, and hopefully also some other redeeming personality traits, right? That you just... And I think it's also easier for women in the sense that... I'll again, easier, loosely. But I think the way media is presented, right? Women can be attracted to more features generally than men, right? Like, a girl can like a guy because he's really funny. Obviously, I'm not funny, but, you know, pretend I am. I'm funny looking. That's why you don't see my face. You know, but I feel like there's a more of a breadth of what women can find attractive, right? Like, I remember there was a woman who thought I was smart and was attracted to me because I was smart. And I was so confused by this, I thought I was in another dimension, because I had never had a woman value my intellect before, ever. And it only happened once, so don't think this... Well, twice. The second time, though, wasn't really the girl being interested in me. I got the nicest compliment, though, from this Russian girl, because she was like, "Oh, you're an American, and you really know your math and sciences, unlike a lot of other Americans." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. What an odd compliment. I'll take it." But I got that compliment. I mean, it says a lot about the guys I guess she was, you know, hanging out with. But then there's this other section up here, right? And this is where you're hot but broke, okay? You're hot, but you're broke, okay? And you can have, and again, women can have a lot of fun with guys that are hot and broke. They just don't marry them, usually. Usually they don't marry. Every now and then you'll find one who's like, I can fix him. But that's the whole thing. That's so like when you, so like that's what I find looks maxing is so funny to me. Because I consider it like the most hilarious fraud thrust upon men by men. Because the only thing look maxing is doing is making the person you're watching telling you to look max money. But that's how I feel like a lot of the content out there is literally just tricking you into the grift. Maybe this is tricking you into the grift, I don't know. And tricking you into the grift of just like watching them where they have this radical solution to your life, and the radical solution is a lie. But, yeah, I don't know, that's how I see it. And so that would be like Fight Club 2. Like, if you were gonna make Fight Club for men, it would be the looks maxing thing, because you would have him telling, like, you gotta be, like, super fit, we gotta do whatever to get ripped, you know, I'm not gonna go into detail, you know, but that's the thing, right? You gotta have the look, and then once you achieve this unachievable look, and the whole point is the look has to be unachievable, right? Because if you can ever achieve the look, the whole house of cards falls down, right? Because you will have achieved the look, and then you will be like, okay, I have now gotten to this pinnacle. It should make everything else in my life work. But if you ever get to that pinnacle, your life, like you can never get there. Because if you ever got there, you get to the top of this mountain, and it would be like, wait, why isn't everything in my life perfect now? It's not? But I mean, that would be like Fight Club 2, right? Like, because, you know, Clavicle got choked out on stream, he shot an alligator with a gun, dead alligator, excuse me. He shot the dead alligator with a gun, he was doing all kind of crazy things, right? Like, he used, I don't know how much I can say about that, but there was a substance abuse. There was substance abuse involved to get him to that point, right? And then if you did a Fight Club 2, you would basically deconstruct somebody like that. And that would be much more of I still, even if we did that, even if I wrote that book, like pretend I could actually write a book. I mean, I did write a novella, but I still don't think guys would be that interested in it. I just don't think it's as compelling of a story. Because I feel like while these pressures exist, and I'm not, and I absolutely know that Big Rexia and all these things are, like, I grew up G.I. Joe, He-Man, right? Ninja Turtles. And you might be like, Ninja Turtles, that's kind of out there. No, all the Ninja Turtles were fucking ripped, dude. What was the one? Surf Sharks. All these shows, right? Batman, Superman. Who's the other one? Wolverine, right? Wolverine being like if you look at the comic one, the only one that was sort of like at least trying to compromise a bit by having Wolverine be 5'3". And then, of course, in the movie, like, well, we can't have him be 5'3". He's going to be like 6 foot, however tall Hugh Jackman is. You know, we can't have a short Wolverine that's comically accurate. We need to have a big, tall Hollywood movie star. So, like, I'm not saying these pressures don't exist for men, but I don't think they exist as intensely as a lot of women are feeling right now. I feel like a lot of women are feeling this social media pressure more. And it could be that's because that's how the algorithm is designed to get engagement, right? Because it knows if you're a woman and you're not happy with how you look, oh boy, I can show you things to make you feel bad about yourself. And then I can sell you the solution on how to feel better about yourself, right? a lot of the solutions for men in that regard are not legal, right? Like, Clavicle was not advocating, well, at least as far as I know, advocating for men to, like, wear makeup or something. Clavicle was advocating for substance abuse issues, which you should never do. So, anyways, that's why I don't think, like, Fight Club 2 from a Clavicle thing and deconstructing that, and like, to me, the whole thing, the whole look maxing thing is just, like, the most hilarious, out of touch with reality grift. And that's the funniest thing. That's why I find it so funny. Because none of that matters. But I don't think that, I think the funny thing is, if that book was written, I feel like more women would read it. Because it would have that whole, like, here's the rotten soul of this kind of manosphere looks maxing crap. And I feel like more women are inclined to, like, agree with that kind of statement and want to read a book about somebody like that having something terrible happen to them, right? Because that would be the story, right? You deconstruct this guy, and it turns out he gets, eventually does something so over the top, ridiculous, that he ends up getting arrested and actually put into jail. And the whole empire comes crashing down. Like probably the closest thing, well, it wouldn't really work for that one. And again, we don't really know how the Clavicle story ends, right? Because it's still being written. But I can't think of a good example in that vein. But I don't see it as being appealing for men. I feel like Fight Club is more appealing to men because the appeal was originally the fighting, right? I wanted to watch Fight Club, not because I thought it was going to be this amazing thesis on the deconstruction of consumerism and corporate life. I wanted to watch Fight Club because I thought it was about this badass underground boxing ring. People just knocked the shit out of each other for 2 hours. Okay? I was sold a Fight Club that was going to be about fighting. And instead, I got a philosophical lesson. I think it's much harder to try and sell the philosophical lesson and have some violence in there to guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just like, that kind of hyper-violent guy, and whatever. You can judge me in the comments. Anyways, I went on longer than I wanted to, but that's really what I was trying to say. Because this is why I see it the same way. I see so many parallels between these two. And they both end relatively the same way, right? Fight Club, you find out, and I mean, even if Tyler was not, like, they both basically end the same way. Fight Club finds out that he has multiple personalities, or she finds out that she has some kind of amnesia. And see, I would have thought it would be better for this one, having discussed this, if she had taken some kind of drug, right? Like, if he had drugged her or something, so she, like, had issues forming new memories or something like that. Again, how do you put that in a story where she thinks she's in 1855 and make it believable, right? Like, there would be kind of it'd be kind of difficult to do unless you had... I think that would be a more enhanced version, right? Because, like, you would have to have, like, one of the things she makes every day and eats, one of the ingredients, she put this drug in it, right? And so you're effectively drugging her. Now, of course, the problem with drugging her then means she's ultimately not going to be liable for the child. Again, I don't think she would really... like if she is as insane as the book puts her, I don't think there's any court that would convict her of child neglect, because, again, she just has the same ending as Fight Club. She ends up in the insane asylum, the mental institution, whatever you want to call it. She's just going to end up there, right? Because she clearly was, not mentally well for those 20-ish years or however long it was. So they both end the same. It's so weird that these are, like, almost parallel stories. The only difference is Fight Club is told in a chronological fashion, Whereas Yesteryear does like a one in the present, one in the past kind of thing. It has sort of that back and forth parallel, because basically the way the book was constructed is, you read the first story and it's about her fake influencer thing, right? The second story, she wakes up the next day and she's like, where the hell am I? And then it kind of goes back and forth with like going into the history of her, of how she got there, like going to this school and this and that. And like, to me, none of those details are really interesting, because to me, the ultimate reason people get into this, and like there was like the guy's trial, I'm not going to say his name, but if you know who he is, he literally came out and said, I do right-wing content because that's what I can sell. Right? So to me, you don't need, it's nice to have the backstory, I guess, because it does add depth to the character, especially if you hate the whole influencer thing. But to me, it doesn't matter, right? Because the reality is, the reason she took the path she took was for the money, right? She married a guy who wasn't really interested in being a husband, wasn't really interested in anything, and so she had to become... It's so funny, because this is a conservative thing where she gets turned into the matriarch of this thing. She's the matriarch behind the scenes, performing as if she's not the matriarch on the screen, because that, the performance has to sell the illusion, right? And again, the whole reason, in my opinion, why people are attracted to this traditional lifestyle illusion is because it's economic anxiety. Our society has become so cutthroat and, so relentless and so ruthless, I guess is probably the best way to put it. It's just so relentless and ruthless that a lot of people, I feel like, don't feel like they have any room to even breathe. So the idea of, for a man that, in another reality, I could be the sole income owner and have a wife that is willing to do all the household chores around the house. And wouldn't that be nice? And I think it's the same way for some women, and also but there's also some women that hate this, right? Because they hate it because they want to reject, they want to work and they want to reject this idea that women belong in the home, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Both sides are equally valid, in my opinion, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a stay-at-home girlfriend. There's also nothing wrong with wanting to be a corporate girlfriend. Like, both options are equally valid. I feel like the pressure of society makes so many people feel like corporate girlfriend is the only way to go, because you don't know what happens what if your husband divorces you, what if this, what if that. There's so much fraying in society today that people just feel like the only person I can depend on is me. And if the only person I can depend on is me, then I can't become the stay-at-home girlfriend. I have to become the corporate girlfriend. But that's the economic anxiety that I think we all feel to some degree. Hopefully you're not overwhelmed with it. But anyways, I think I rambled long enough. I think I said everything I wanted to say. Like, I don't really write scripts. If you're listening to this, you're probably, God damn, you repeated yourself like 4 times. It's like, I know, I repeat myself for emphasis. But I don't really write script. I could not write a script about this. I could. But I couldn't sit there and give you the same emotional, raw thing if I'm sitting here reading off a script. I don't understand how people do it. Like, if I was going to write a script, I might as well just use my voice and run it through an AI thing and just have my AI voice read the script. Like, why would I even do anything else, right? Because it just wouldn't make any sense for me to do it anyway. So I don't do anything scripted. So there's probably a lot of stuff that's redundant and all that. And I really didn't add too much to my list. But, anyways, let me know what you think. Am I insane? All right, look. I know that I'm insane. I'm pretty confident I'm the only person that's going to come up with this analysis, which is all the more reason I want to put my analysis out there. So once again, as always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to say something in the comments. I do always look forward to your questions. And as always, thank you again, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.